Austin at Bates Nursery. As Tyler said, we're busy out here today, so I'm going to try to keep this one pretty clear. Today we're talking about fertilizing trees and plants. I actually did a couple weeks ago a pretty in-depth webinar on fertilizers and their labels and how to choose them for what you're going to want to be doing specifically. So I'm not going to go into that too much today, but I did bring in some products with me to kind of show you a few that we sell here and what they're mainly used for. So fertilizing, especially with small, younger plants or things that are less established, is going to be something that we want to try to do every year. Something that we need to know is, or a few things we need to know is what we're going to feed our plants, what product we're going to use, and then also the timing of when we're going to do it. Timing is kind of crucial when it comes to fertilizing. If they're not able to use the nutrient, then it's just more or less a waste of money you're dropping down there. So when do we fertilize? The answer is technically pretty much just whenever a plant is actively growing. So in the springtime, generally all our plants are starting to wake up. I'm sure you're noticing around town and in your yard things are starting to leaf out. That's when they're actively growing and they're using nutrient, they're using water. So that's whenever we need to get our fertilizer dropped down. It is good to know again which product we're going to use. Say you're fertilizing young little seedlings, or if you're fertilizing larger trees. I do kind of want to let you know too, when it comes to large trees, things that have been there for years or even decades, it's not as necessary to fertilize, bigger trees like that have been around for so long. They're able to find their own nutrient down in our pretty nutrient-rich soil that we have here, and it's not all that big of a deal to have to fertilize those big ones. But the younger ones, whenever we first plant them, or as they're growing through the first few seasons in our gardens, it's good practice to get some fertilizer down. So let's talk a little bit about what I've brought in here today. I brought in 3 products. That is our organic products. It's nice to go organic. It's just something that we try to push, and these are good products. So what I've got first is just a general plant tone here. Good for pretty much all plants. It's an organic product, like I said. It's hard to burn roots with organic products, so going to be pretty safe. The second one here is called Holly Tone, one of our best sellers. This is good for your evergreens and your acid-loving food, like azaleas or camellias. Those plants like a lower pH, and this will drop the pH a little bit on that, and it's good to add into those type of plants. The third one here is simply called Tree Tone. This has some overlap here. You don't necessarily have to just use it on trees. I wanted to clear this up while I'm here too. A tree and a shrub botanically are really the same thing. There is no difference. What they are is they are woody plants is what we call them. So mainly we talk about trees as being trees whenever they're much larger, and we talk about shrubs that are much smaller. But the thing is, like I said, botanically, there's really no difference. They're both just woody plants. So you can use this tree tone for your shrubs if you wanted to as well. You don't just have to use it for trees. So, like I said, these are all our organic products, and they're good to use for just about anything. There's also another one I didn't bring in for a tomato tone. That's got added calcium to it. Tomatoes need a fair amount of calcium to help with a problem called blossom end rot. That's added to that fertilizer, so that's specific to tomatoes as well. So, all 3 good products. Next one I brought in over here, I brought this in because this is called a premium bedding plant food. This is a 7-22-8 mix. It's good for blooming plants. The middle number dictates more or less your flower production and your root production. So this one here is marketed for bougainvillea, hibiscus, pansies right on the front. Bedding plants, so all your annuals that you're going to set out in the bed. I wanted to bring this in too as well to show you that if you're planting a fairly large area of, say, annuals and you want a lot of color down there, or you're just starting a brand new bed, there's no plant material in it at all, sometimes it's a little bit easier to go ahead and take something like this product here and scatter it up top the whole soil before you ever even start planting. That way you're not going to have to individually fertilize each pansy or whatever annual you put in there. You can take this product right here and broadcast it all over the soil, and that way you have an even fertilizer spread on top of all the soil before you ever even plant. So I like this one here. I use this every year in containers as well. It's good for that, for flowering plants specifically. So really good product. It's not organic. This is a synthetic product. So just know that the numbers are a little bit higher. So they're going to kind of juice those plants a little bit more so than what these organics will. The organics are nice though because they also have added mycorrhiza, which is like beneficial fungi, and that helps everything down in that soil just kind of live together, work together, and be good. So that's another reason why we use organics over synthetics. But if you are going to go synthetics, this is a good product right here. And then, last but not least, good old Miracle Grow. This is probably what you've called blue water, what we call it around here a lot of times, because you're going to mix this with water. You mix it 1 tablespoon per gallon in, say, like a 5-gallon bucket, and walk around and liquid feed your plants. I don't really recommend this for like larger trees and shrubs. The thing about this product is that it works really well, really quickly, but it's also lost very quickly. So the water leaches out and it leaches down into the soil and away pretty quickly. So I don't really use that for shrubs and trees all that much, but I do use this for young, say, seedlings that I'm just putting out in the garden, mainly for, so vegetable production. So I'm getting tomatoes out, or if I'm getting peppers out, and I get them planted in a row, I can go through and take my little milk jug or a little whatever type of cup and individually water each little seedling, and that'll be used by those roots very quickly, and you'll see a jump pretty quick with your young seedlings. So this one's also good for containers as well. If you're growing plants in containers, doing this 2 or 3 times a season with a mixed container full of annuals in it, you'll see much better growth in plants and just general vigor in your containers. So good one to use. Another thing though on timing with this, say you are growing tomatoes specifically, this product right here has a lot of nitrogen in it. Nitrogen is the first number in the fertilizer label. It produces green growth, and a lot of it, and honestly very quickly. So once a plant, like we're going to talk tomatoes specifically because we all love growing tomatoes. Once they get about, I don't know, about waist high, if you will, they're starting to actively grow, and you can really see. Using a product like this that has this is a 24% nitrogen, which is fairly high, so that's going to produce green growth. If you keep feeding this through the whole season with your tomatoes, what you're going to see is this big, beautiful, bushy green plant with not a single fruit on it. So that's what you need to switch over. That's that thing about timing I was talking about. Doing it early in a plant's life, in a small tomato plant's life, is fine. That's going to get it up and growing. After that, we need to cut out that nitrogen and let that plant fill out, and that way it'll flower and then fruit. Because like I said, if you have too much of this nitrogen in the soil, going to get a big green plant, no blooms behind it. So just be careful on the timing of when you do that. All right. So let's move on to where you're going to fertilize and how you're going to do it. So I brought in a plant today. Pretty simple. Little cute boxwood here called Petite Pillar. It's a dwarf boxwood, pretty small. I could have chosen any plant. I just had this one close, so I grabbed it. And I brought this in today because I wanted to talk about the drip line of a plant. The drip line of a plant is where the water drips off the leaves and then comes down. So that is where we are going to be fertilizing. So whenever it comes to plants in containers, are kind of hard to say because they're constricted to where they're going to go, or they're restricted to where they're going to go. So, but in nature or a large tree outside, what you're going to see is a stem that goes up to a canopy. That canopy, at the edge of that canopy, is the drip line. That's where the water, for the most part, is going to, when it rains, is going to hit those leaves and then fall down the sides at the edge of that canopy, right? At this spot, say this were a taller tree. That's the edge of your canopy. That's where the water is going to drip down to the roots. And this makes sense because the roots down below of a tree more or less mimic the top plant of the part of the tree as well. So if you have a 20-foot spread on a round tree, the spread going 20 feet, typically down below, you're going to get your trunk, and then down below going out, your roots are going to go roughly about 20 feet as well. They're going to mimic the top of that canopy. And there's a reason for that, and that's because most of the water drips off the drip line of the tree. So if the roots that are using the most water and trying to actively seek their water goes out to about the drip line of the plant, and that's where they're going to get their water. So whenever we fertilize, we want to mimic that as well. So where we're going to put our actual fertilizer is going to be at the drip line of that plant. So you take your shrub or whatever it is and you find the edge of it, and then you are going to make more or less just you just kind of make a little cut in the ground or you don't even really have to do that if you don't want to. But you're going to scatter these products, or you're going to water with the Miracle Grow. But you're going to scatter these products kind of mainly around that drip line of the plant. You're going to take that fertilizer and you're going to work it into at least the first 2 to 3 to 4 inches of the soil. Now, the reason we do that is because we don't want to lose our fertilizer. That's the biggest thing. So if you just lay it right on top, that may be okay, and it may be able to leach into the soil. But a lot of times what happens is a heavy rain will come and wash that away. So we want to make sure we keep our fertilizer where it needs to be. So like I was saying, put it down on the ground, work it in the first couple inches of the soil, 2 or 3 inches of the soil. Make sure it's worked in really well, and then kind of press it down. And then after that, we're going to need to water. The water is going to kind of start that process of the leaching process, which is what we want. We want those chemicals or the nutrients to go down to the root system. So we're going to water, soak it in really well, and that way we're going to keep our fertilizer where we want it. If it is like I said, when I was using the bedding plant food right here, you can scatter this across the whole bed at first, plant all your plants how you're going to want them, and then we're going to water the whole bed properly after that, and that way we can get that process of the leaching process going. Say we are talking about vegetable production. You're going to hear a term from me or from really anybody, and it's called side dressing. This is another way to add fertilizer, and it's mainly for row cropping or just plants that we have set in rows, similar to tomatoes or corn or beans. Whenever we're putting things in rows, we call this side dressing. So you go down either side of the row. Say you got a row of tomatoes down here. You're going to find that drip line of where the tomatoes are out, where the outer leaves are going. And you're going to more or less it's kind of easiest for me actually to just take like the other end of a shovel or something and put it in the ground and kind of make a little trench, if you will, down your line, drip line on either side of your row. You go on one side and then you go down the other, and you more or less just take these products and you just put it right down that trench, and then you cover it back up and water each side of it really well, or just wait for a day where you know it's going to rain really well. Get a good, nice soaking rain, get your fertilizer out right before that, and get it covered up to where you know it's going to stay where you want it. Side dress right down either side of those rows, let the rain come down, and start that process of the leaching of the fertilizer to get down to the plants. So that is honestly more or less all you're going to need to know when it comes to fertilizer. And like I said, if you need more in-depth, if you have questions or need a more in-depth video about how to read fertilizer labels and what they're going to do, go back and watch my other webinar that I did. It was a really good one. It was pretty extensive. I got in there pretty deep, so that'll help you out with actually reading the labels of the product. But when it comes to applying the fertilizer, it is not rocket science, y'all. It's just really get the food where you need it to be around the drip line of that plant, and make sure you soak it in really well after that, and your plants are going to benefit from that heavily. Keep them green, keep them clean, and that's what we want to do with our plants.
All right, question from Nancy here. Hello, I have a question about spreading weed killer like Preen and fertilizing plants in beds. Can I spread both chemicals at the same time, or is it necessary to spread weed killer and wait to add fertilizer?
It doesn't matter, especially if you're using a Preen, which is a pre-emergent. That's just going to stop anything new, any seeds that are down in the ground from actually germinating. So that's the pre-emergent, and it hasn't emerged yet. It's before that. So get your Preen down. That's fine. You can put fertilizer right on top of that, and it's not going to change anything. The fertilizer is going to go more to the plants, and the Preen's going to go to stopping the weed control. So, yeah, not a big deal there. You can do both right at the same time.
All right, and Aiden on Facebook is asking, is the fertilizer for veggie gardens too? Which fertilizer should I broadcast on veggie and herb beds? And I guess Aiden was probably referring to the Miracle Grow and perhaps possibly that bed fertilizer.
Yeah. This bedding fertilizer, for young vegetable gardens, like I was saying, if you want to give them a boost when they're young seedlings, use this product first and use them when you water. You can plant them and then water with this if you want to. That'll give them a little boost right off the bat. But if you did want to do a broadcast type of spread, over the whole top of the dirt, say you got a raised bed and it's just like 4x4, and you want to just broadcast the whole thing, then broadcast it with one of these products. Just a plant tone is simple. If you're growing tomatoes, use tomato tone. Really, any of these will work for the most part, but you're just going to the organics especially, you just broadcast that over the top, work it all in, and then plant your veggies, and that way you've got your fertilizer already in there ready to go down in the root zone where they need to be, and they'll be used properly.
Alrighty, let's see here. Lois is asking, would you explain the numbers on the fertilizer and what each number feeds. If you want to just give a general overview, and we're referring people to our other fertilizer label fertilizer label webinar, please.
Yeah, we'll see if you can see this. So yeah, just real quickly, let's turn this here. This is the numbers on the fertilizer label. This is crucial. Honestly, it doesn't matter too much what this thing says up here. It does a little bit, whether the plant tone or tree tone or tomato tone. It matters a little bit what the label says, but with the organics, it's not much different. So what we have right here is a 5-3-3. The numbers, these are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those are the three biggest macronutrients that plants need. There's a whole lot of other nutrients that plants need as well, but those are the three big ones. Nitrogen, which is the first number, is what plants need the most, and this is responsible for green growth. So this makes a plant keep that good rich green color, which is what we want, keeps them vigorous, keeps them growing. That is the big one. Like I was mentioning earlier, though, if that number starts to get pretty high, say you start to get into that 20 and even higher, you need to be careful with fruiting plants, because they'll, like I said earlier, want to create a bushy green plant and not a lot of fruit behind that. So timing on that is crucial, and also knowing that first number, when to use that and when not to. Early in the season, heavy nitrogen is fine. Middle of the season, for vegetable production, you need to slow that number down, and we need to switch over to our middle number, which the middle number in this one is a 3%. These are pretty low numbers, by the way, y'all. Organics versus synthetics, first off, is that the numbers are going to be a lot lower. You can't get those percentages out of, this is mainly just, animal waste is where we get, a lot of this stuff from. So the numbers aren't near as high as what you're going to see on the synthetics. But still works very, very well. And this one, like I said, phosphorus in the middle, that is at 3%. That is responsible for blooms and active roots. So if we get into the season and you want to keep on a fertilizer regimen and you are growing tomatoes, start with the first number, nitrogen, being fairly high first, and then we switch over to a higher middle number fertilizer and a lower first number fertilizer, and that will start producing more blooms and hence more fruit after that. If we have more blooms, can potentially be more fruit. So phosphorus is the middle number. Third number is potassium, and this is mainly, potassium is really, it's not specific to anything really. It's mainly just general plant growth and vigor. It makes things happen, enzymes in the plant and all these very detailed things work properly and keep the plant actively growing and healthy. So those are the three numbers. Really, the last number, you can almost go as high as you wanted to on that. You rarely have excess amounts of potassium in the soil. It can happen, but for the most part, it's not that big of a deal. So having those three numbers in your head and what they're going to do is how you're going to choose your products.
All right. Thoughts on fish emulsion and kelp fertilizer?
Both some more organics. Like I said, it doesn't matter too much on what that label says. You're going to look at those numbers and see how much is actually in it. I'm pretty sure that those ones are pretty small numbered. I'm not sure how much actual food is in them. But yeah, people use it all the time. It's got a little smell to it, like most of the organics do. They don't smell good. But yeah, using that product is fine just the same. Just like I said, you're looking at those numbers. You're not really reading that label too much.
Yeah, I tend to dilute fish emulsion and water it in. I did that for my broccoli. It did really well. Not so much stink. It's kind of funky, but the more you dilute it, the less bad it is.
Yeah.
Nancy's asking also, if plants spend the winter dormant in a garage, can I give them something to boost or stimulate them to come out of dormancy?
So if they're in containers and they're dormant, they're not going to be using that fertilizer whenever you put it on there. But the good thing is that if you have it in your garage, it is protected from washing away or leaching through the pot without the plant actively using it. So if you wanted to go ahead and get that in, but while they're dormant and they're not out in the weather, then that'd be fine. That fertilizer will just sit in the top of that pot and just wait until it's time. Once temperature rises enough for them to actively start working. So yeah, if you want to go ahead and do that, that's fine. Just know they're not actually going to use that fertilizer until they actually get out and start growing and that temperature raises a little bit.
All right. I planted yews last year. Stella's asking. A couple are turning yellow. What fertilizer should I use? What's going on?
Well, when it comes to yew specifically, usually when I talk to people about dense yew, when I say yew, y'all, it's YEW. That's a type of plant. It's generally like one of the top 3 hardiest plants we sell. I mean, once they're latched in, they can live for years, decades. I mean, so it's a very tough plant. If you only planted it was only been that long, that's a little bit, it raises questions to me, mainly on the wet side. Dense yew does not like to have wet feet whatsoever. So I don't know if you're in a heavy clay environment or a wet, kind of wetter spot. A lot of times when I see dense yews going yellow, it's mainly because of moisture down below. So it may not be a fertilizer thing at all. If it were a fertilizer thing and you do have proper drainage and nothing's going on there and you're seeing yellowing means it needs more nitrogen. So that very first number you're going to use and boost that up a little bit. Dense yews are not known for needing a ton of nutrient, though. They can live in really poor sites, but being on a wet spot or a non-draining heavy clay scenario is probably what's making your dense yews turn yellow, more so than like a lack of nitrogen.
All right, and we're down to the last question, so if you have any other questions, please submit them into the chat below. We're going to try and keep things a little concise today. A question from Teresa on Facebook. Do worm castings or compost work the same way for side dressing vegetable gardens? How often should I fertilize the summer food garden?
Yes, it does work the same way as the fertilizers. It's just much less. The amount of nutrient those are great products to use. Don't get me wrong. Mixing that into compost and earthworm casting, mixing into your soil is really a good thing to do every year, mainly for I guess the micronutrients that plants need that we don't generally give them or don't even think about. Keeping that in the soil really works well. And if you're going to do a big vegetable garden, you can just put those, say you got bags or your wheelbarrow on it or whatever, kind of pick your rows where you're going to go and then keep that earthworm castings kind of in the row that you're going to be planting in. Other than that, you could do a general, just throw earthworm castings over your whole garden or your whole raised bed, work it in, and you can do this every year. You could even do it twice a year if you wanted to, but really just once in the spring, getting that in there really boosts it out for the spring production. So yeah, never a bad thing to add compost. That's just nice organic material, has a lot of good stuff in it. So yeah, do it.
It helps build your soil too, and healthy soil is
That's the whole
part
start.
of
the
the equation.
Yeah, it's the biggest part really. If it's happy down below, usually it's happy up top.
Yep. Nancy's asking, what is quote unquote Thrive, and is it different from other fertilizers?
Super Thrive.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, you're probably talking about Super Thrive. It's been around forever. Look at the numbers on Super Thrive. It's actually not as much as you think it is, and hardly at all, actually. It's not even a 1%. It's like a 0.1% formula. I've never used Super Thrive, y'all. I know it is marketed greatly. I mean, they did a heck of a job getting that thing to make people think that it really boosts plants. I've never seen any like crazy response with Super Thrive. No more. Like, I'm looking for bigger numbers whenever I'm fertilizing. Those 3 numbers, I want them higher rather than lower. So like I said, it's like a 0.1% nitrogen. It's marketed really well. I'll say that, but it's not a product that I use very often. I'll just say it.
All right, and what about bulb plants? How does bone meal fit into the fertilizer scheme?
It needs to be. I think actually on the bone meal bag, it's got bulbs on it. Bulbs are really heavy on the middle number as well, so that's going to have. I'm pretty sure it's a 10% bone meal in the product that we sell here, so that's a pretty good middle number, and that's what bulbs really, they use a lot of that as well. So that's kind of what we use that for.
And there's an Espoma bulb tone as well.
Mm-hmm. And I guarantee it's got a high middle number. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That I was going to say, y'all, I know y'all have noticed it. I know I have. I've got the bug. Spring is here. It's no joke. I know y'all have seen trees around town. The cherries started blooming yesterday. We got dogwoods and redbuds up next. We got plenty of trees to look at out here and plenty of shrubs that are starting to flower. I know y'all are getting the itch out there. We're trying to bring it in as much as we can, have as much plant material for you to look at. So awesome time to come out to Bates. We are busy, do know that, so bear with us if you have some questions and we're with people. There's just a lot of people wanting to garden this year, so we'll do our best to help you out as much as you need it, but get on out here. It's a sight to see.
Yep. Thank you all.
Thank
have
you
a good
guys.
day.